Good morning and welcome to Ag Talking Raw, where I talk raw about agriculture and other things that are on my mind. Today, I have a subject. Yes, a subject. It's not this subject. Unless you want this subject, I'm going to have these things available, but I want to tweak them a little bit more before we go ahead and put them on the website. I think these are something that people get a kick out of. That's the first slurp of the coffee for today. Okay, so my subject today is farming and YouTube. Okay, I haven't really thought too much about it until this morning. I work pretty hard and I try to get a full night's sleep, and I'm trying to get my color right so I look kind of, ox-beamish. Oxbeam. So I've been thinking about this and how farming is actually the opposite of YouTube. It's the opposite. And there are farmers on YouTube, and there are creators on YouTube, and there are farmer creators on YouTube. And you're probably wondering where I'm going to go with this thing. But, okay, so we go 100 years back into agriculture. And the farmers out in 100 years ago, as they were out west migrating, breaking the plains, sod busting and doing all that stuff, there was a great need for increase in the food supply 100 years ago because population had pretty much exploded in the United States and, worldwide, I guess. And there was huge need for farming in the country and the world, really. And they just kind of went out west. They broke sod, they grew wheat, and by the 1920s, wheat was $4.50 a bushel. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. It was. It was shipped by rail. There were no real trucking. It was all shipped by rail and ship across the oceans, and then, of course, the Dust Bowl comes. So that's farming 100 years ago. Now, 100 years ago, farmers farmed basically for their own survival up until about 100 years ago. About 100 years ago, they started to farm for profit, for the most part, if a farmer grew a field of corn and he had excess, he would sell the excess off for, to his neighbors who maybe wanted to expand on their animals or whatnot, and meat needed to be sold. Cattle needed to be sold, so they would raise these animals up. What wasn't needed for their own survival went off to the markets, and they were killed and slaughtered and cut up into bits and pieces and sold to the townfolk, who in all rights did farm to a degree. I mean, even in the towns that were local here, we had flocks of wild chickens. I remember kids going out and gathering the eggs from the wild chickens in Frenchtown. Yeah, if you are my age, back in the 70s and 80s, and I don't think they made it into the 90s, but definitely 70s and 80s, there was a huge flock of chickens in Frenchtown. And Frenchtown is full of barns, old barns. They weren't garages for cars. They were barns for animals in town. So, now, the connection between farming and YouTube are common here. Just kind of bear with me. So as the 20s rolled on and the townfolk, the Roaring 20s, and then that gave to the fall of 29 and into the 1930s, the town people, there was no work. The stock market, that orchestrated mess by, let's see, who was the orchestrated mess maker? Oh, yes, Kennedy. Kennedy and two others. I can't remember their names, but I think about it. I could probably pull them back up out of my memory banks as something that I learned many, many years ago. But John F. Kennedy's father is one of the matriarchs, or the underminers of the stock market, and they overinflated it. Everybody was doing well, people were buying cars and buying houses and buying farms, and then all of a sudden, boom, the crash of 29, and the profiteers made their money, and the country and the world was plummeted into a Great Depression. So at that point, farmers were surviving. Out west, not so much, because they had broke the sod. They had bought these pieces of property, were given to them by the government, and they went up to their eye teeth to farm out there, survive, and grow grain for the rest of the world that didn't. And it was like, wow, that's cool. Now nothing will grow. Dust would lay. My grandmother, who is 94, can remember waking up, and the sheets and the blankets that they slept in, there was dust. And she was raised right across the river in Pennsylvania, but my grandparents on both sides of the river remember this quite vividly. Now, both my grandfathers are dead. My grandmothers are both still alive. They're both 94. My grandmother Grace, she'll be 95 here in January if she makes it that long. But they remember the dust from the 30s, the dirty 30s, the Dust Bowl, because they would have dust storms that would black out for days, and the dust would come all the way east, and there would be as much as an eighth to a quarter of an inch of dust land in New York City in one night. So that was like the beginning of farming for profit instead of survival. Now, it's kind of funny how this goes, because the people that continued to want to farm for survival did okay, not great. They still farmed a very diverse farm. They raised chickens, hogs, cattle, dairy, and beef, and grain. That was a very diversified farm. And even in some cases, the wife, not all cases, not many cases, I guess, but the wife would be a school teacher or do something else. And, outside of the home, whether she did baked goods for the town folks and had a little store or something like that. And it was that way all across rural America from coast to coast. And then, the war happens, and that's when this thing gets even rolling a little more, because an army runs on its stomach. So higher priced food for the war effort, that definitely happened in farms. What men were not here, there were women that farmed. Women took up the slack from the boys that went off to war, and the old men or older men who were the fathers of these boys, they their wives, their mothers, or these boys' mothers and sisters, they did something within the war effort, whether they were knocking together B-20, B-20 God knows what's, B-17s, B-24s, B-26s, B-25s, the P-51s, all those airplanes. They were put together by mostly women. There were women pilots that flew them over the Tinsel Highway, or the Tinsel, they flew them across the Atlantic, and then were put on DC-3s and shipped back to the United States to fly new airplanes back to the supply chain. Women did that. So you're probably wondering, what in the hell am I talking about? Well, I was here at the humble beginnings of YouTube. I actually started watching YouTube in probably about 2006, late 2006, and 2007 came, and I thought, wow, I'd like to actually do that. 2008 comes along, and it's like, I'm doing this. So 3 years of being a lurker, which is a new term back then, or a watcher, to being a creator. And I showed everything that I did on YouTube, just like, most people in the beginnings did. And it was on our own backs. We spent our own money. We struggled with editing software because, let's face it, editing software was extraordinarily expensive. You could get Windows Movie Maker, and that's what I was using then. And then, of course, I went over in 2012. I bought the Apple computer and moved up to the what the heck was this one? I forget what the in-house one was, but I ended up buying Final Cut Pro, and that's what I've been using now for many years. Final Cut Pro on my Apple computer. So farming changed. In the 1950s, you made money. I mean, people made money. Poultry became big. Pork was getting bigger. Dairy was growing. People were expanding, and then that's by the 1960s, the small dairy farm, hog farm, poultry farms, they were starting to phase out. After the war, the boys didn't come home to the farm. They didn't buy their own farms. They went to work in a factory building cars, trucks, tanks, weapons of war. Mostly anything that a factory built, that's where the boys went home to. They didn't go back to the farm. So the farm around the late 1940s and into the 1950s, those farms were no longer survival farms. They had to farm for profit at that point, because it was, they started to, a small farm, if a son came back from war, whether it be the World War II or even the Korean War, they needed more land, and mom and pop over here are getting old because their son was killed in the war or whatever happened, and they started gobbling these things up. And things changed. By the 1970s, the farm mechanization had just exploded. The difference from 1955 to 1975, there were a lot of tractor companies that just went poof. They went out of business. You could no longer buy them from what you could buy in 1955 from Montgomery Ward's is no longer even a tractor company. It's been bought up by other companies, rebranded, remade, and then by the 1980s, it crashed. A lot of people went bankrupt. A lot of farms went bankrupt. They had all these big machines. We were producing food like there was no tomorrow. We had a really shitty president that screwed up trade deals, Jimmy Carter, and things went all to hell in the 1980s. We went from $3 corn to $1.25 corn. We went from getting $3 a bale for alfalfa hay to getting $1 a bale for alfalfa hay. Or went to be dairy farms within a mile of one another to, I think we're under 60 dairy farms in the whole state of New Jersey now. I could, within a mile of us, there was Perhalos, there was Gordukes, there was Gambozis, there was Pouches, which was my grandparents. They were all within, you could jump within a mile of one another. You get on out, there was Gunther's, and, we could just go all over the place. And Cooley's down there had a dairy, and, they were all dairies. And then, boom, by 1981... there was I would say that Perhalo was out sometime in the early 80s, 82. He was done with cows, 83, something like that. Gordukes made it all the way to 1989, and we went all the way till 2011 milking cows, because things evolved, things grew, just like they had all up through the 1950s, gobbling up small grain producers, and the mechanization caused fewer people to create higher dollar crops, advances in fertilizers and seed and all this stuff. Now, that's awesome, right? It's awesome. Well, a lot of people got hurt. A lot of people died. A lot of people lost their farms, over this mechanization, because things were getting mechanical really quickly, and safety was not really on the forefront of most people's minds. I mean, farm safety for just kids, that came about in the late 80s. I remember that. I remember stories in farm magazines of kids getting caught in augers, and the Harmless Farmer, that was in 1972 or 3, that he lost his arms at age 2. So there was this mechanization that was ahead of the safety issues. So here we are with the computer. okay, and YouTube. So at the forefront of the or the beginnings of YouTube, we had just a handful of creators that started this thing, and it kind of snowballed a little bit for a couple of years. There was a lot of guys jumping on, and they weren't really serious creators. It was, oh, let's make an account on YouTube. We'll put a video up, and people will watch it, and yay. Maybe I'll put a video up once every month, maybe once every 2 months, once every week, maybe, and things like that, which was pretty cool to watch because we kind of started to get into seeing our favorite people, and people became popular on YouTube, just like any other platform. They become popular, and then something happens, and they either die or get over popular, or people just get tired of watching them, and they disappear, or they say something, or affiliate themselves with a controversial subject, and they people just would stop watching them. It was kind of self-regulated that way. And then in 2007, I think middle of 2007, Gobble My Balls bought YouTube, and that's when advertising started to come on in 2007. And it was through a select few people. There wasn't a lot of people that were allowed to advertise. And I started in 2008, and there was not advertising on every single channel. It was advertising on a select few, the ones that had the most. Community Channel was a woman that I used to watch. She was a lot of fun. A lot of well thought out videos. I watched Hot for Words. She was a pretty girl, and she was pretty smart too. So I kind of liked Hot for Words, and she's gone now. Community Channel's gone. I watched a guy by the name of David Rock. He turned out to be a pedophile, but he did a lot of really amazing things, and he really kind of is the reason that I started my YouTube channel, because he was doing stuff he was doing mechanical stuff that I did and could do, and I just thought that was really cool, and that's really why I started my YouTube channel. Now, Northern Farmer, he was on, but he didn't make very good content. I had watched some of his videos, and I believe he had back problems way back in the day. I'm not 100% sure of that, but I'm pretty sure he had back problems. I can't remember. I mean, we're talking 10, 12 years ago. So there were a couple of farmers out there. It was Wagner, Wayne Wick, if any of you remember Wayne Wick, that were on. And just life circumstances shut them down. Some have come back. Wayne has tried to come back. It just isn't working for him because he's no longer on the farm. Northern Farmer, he's doing a good job, though. I mean, he really, Tyson's doing a really good job, and I enjoy his videos. It's a different type of agriculture from what I grew up with and am used to, because his season is like compressed. His season's half of what ours is, and it's amazing to see what he gets done. And then the winter months come, and it's like 20, 30 below zero all the time. It's crazy. That'll make you old fast. So as we go through YouTube and we get up into like 2015, and I would say that I was probably in my heyday, on the YouTube platform. Around 2015, 2016, I didn't have 100,000 subscribers, but I was making pretty decent money on YouTube. I was monetized, obviously. A lot of people were watching me. And then what happens on YouTube is what happened to farming, say 40, 50 years ago. And it was, I can do this better. I can do a better job. I can get bigger faster. Google changed the parameters of how our videos were watched, and if there was language, once they introduced the algorithm, if there was language that the algorithm didn't like, you were pushed off. If there was content that just basically content that they didn't feel was appropriate, they would push you back. And it kind of became a liberal place, and it had to be super it is super hyper analyzed, and there are some channels that get way more attention than other channels, and I think, and not because the content's better or worse or whatever, but the algorithm just picks up on certain things. Now, my mouth runs away. I know it. It's just me. I don't change for the algorithm like a lot of people have. And that will lead me to the decline in where I am. I'm actually not in a decline. I'm on a flat line. YouTube, Google has basically flatlined my channel. They're like, he's got a lot of political stuff that he talks about. He curses a little bit. He shows things that aren't entirely safe. He vlogs every day, which back in the day they wanted you to, and now they don't. They want you to have 5 days or 7 days of footage compressed into a 10 to 15 minute video, or 10 to 20 minute or 15 to 20 minute video now. Used to be anything over 5 minutes you couldn't put on YouTube. So if you look at my early videos, they're only 3 minutes long, because if you made them 5, it wouldn't take it. It would kick it back. If you made that thing 5 minutes and 1 second long, nope, sorry, too long for YouTube. And a lot of people don't remember that. But so YouTube has grown to the point where it's not creators. Creators don't really own their channels hardly anymore either. They think they do. You know, I still own my channel. I'm not a sellout to anybody. There for a while I was taking on some not sponsored stuff, but some equipment and things to try out on the channel, and it didn't make me feel very good. You know, it's like, yay! Peckway did a wonderful thing for me. They gave me 3 pieces of equipment to use for several years. Used them hard. I used them hard. I posted videos, but I felt weird about posting videos about those pieces of equipment because there were problems with the equipment. And they didn't want me to say, oh, hey, by the way, this thing, it worked good when I first got it, but 3 weeks in, this broke and that broke and the other thing fell apart and that broke off and I got this and that. Oh, and when you get a flat tire, they're airplane tires, and those airplane tires cost you $500 a piece. And I've gone through 2 of them, so how free is this thing? You know, they don't want you to say that. I did enjoy using the equipment. It worked well in its applications. You don't exceed their limitations because they do have limited things that just, they're limited. They're not, you know, when they say it's a mid-capacity rig, by golly, don't try to force anything that's remotely high capacity through their rake. It won't work, but it works awesome in the mid-capacity range and things like that. So I was getting stuff from Auxbeam. Auxbeam sent me a light, and they wanted me to do a review like the day after I got the light. Like, oh, could you put a positive review up? You're an influencer. I'm like, I'm a tester. I'm not an influencer, and if I influence anybody, it's going to be an honest influence. It's not going to be a, hey, look, Auxbeam gave me this awesome light. I haven't tried it yet, but it's the best thing, and you should go buy it. That's not me. I had a contract that I had signed through WD-40. WD-40, they're a bunch of liars. I never received $1 for what I did. They didn't like what I was going to do. They changed the contract. They sent me a second contract after I had signed the first contract because they had actually watched some of my videos and realized, hey, if this guy gets something and it's no good, he's going to say it's no damn good, and we may have a problem here. So I kind of scared them, and they wanted Instagram posts at $50 a post. I posted 3 Instagram posts. They were very tasteful posts. There was no videos. They were just photographs. And then when I went to do the video, they called me. The dude calls me and said, well, have you had a chance to try the products? I'm like, well, yeah, I put the tube in the gun and I've greased one machine with it. But I can't do a video yet. I says, and besides, you only gave me 1 tube of each of this stuff. And they're like, oh, well, we'll send you some more. So they send me another tube of each of the product, and I couldn't make a video. I think I made 1 video, and it was like I just didn't feel good about what I was doing. So that was the end for me as far as I was concerned. I had a clothing company send me clothes. I didn't want what they sent me. They wanted me to wear what they sent me, and they were upset that I didn't wear what they sent me because I don't wear that style of clothing, you know? And I told them what sizes I needed, and they didn't send me the sizes that I needed. Timothy's a big boy, and he would have worked out well in those bib overhauls. But I cannot honestly put on those bib overhauls, wear them once, and say, hey, you all need to buy these things because they're great. I would have to wear a couple pairs out before I made my decision as to whether they were great or not. So this is bringing me kind of too far ahead. But so about 4 years ago, this influencer thing started to get really out of control. People are sending farmers free machines to use, and I was part of that. I didn't do what they wanted me to do, therefore nobody asked me for anything anymore. And I tell them, if you want to give me something, you can give it to me and I'll use it, and if it's good, I'll put it up on my channel. If it's no good, you can come get the piece of shit. And that doesn't set well with them because that's not what they're used to. And what is happening is we've got big farming channels now. They've surpassed me because I don't fit the mold that Google wants me to fit into. They don't like honest opinions about stuff. They want you to do what they say to do, and there's, it's either their way or the highway. That is all I ever wanted out of YouTube when I realized I was gaining in popularity. When I found out they were giving the 100,000 subscriber award, I don't care if I get anything more or less or whatever. That was it. I'm happy with that. This channel doesn't need to go, well, this isn't the channel I got that for, but these channels don't need to go any farther than that. I don't need to sell myself to get another one. I don't need to sell myself to look at videos, or to make videos that don't make me feel good, because that's where YouTube started. We did these things because it made us feel good. It made us, it was an expression of what we were doing. We got paid, that made us feel good. I've made some investments on that money. I didn't just blow it. I bought houses, and these are things that when I'm too old to work that I can sell, and move on with, retirement or whatever. And I still enjoy doing what I'm doing because I don't answer to anybody. Is it frustrating when you put up a video and you feel that it's a good video that follows all the guidelines and then it gets like terrible views, and that's okay. It doesn't matter. But when you start getting terrible views, the algorithm pushes you back because you're not popular, right? So you do something that is kind of fitting within their box of acceptance, and the algorithm, or people don't watch it because it's not within what they signed on to see, and then the algorithm says, oh, you used to get 40,000 views in 30 hours or 35 hours, and now this video has only gotten 18 to 20,000 views in that 30 hours or 40 hours time. You're not so popular anymore, so we're just going to we'll rank you. If you go to Social Blade, you can see the rankings of these channels and how you're ranked as to the views that you get. So it's kind of hard to please the algorithm and please your viewers. It's a balance we have to make. Now, farming, after the crash of the 1980s, people just kind of muddled along and did what they could do. The farms in the Midwest continued to chug along, busting sod and doing whatever they were doing. There was a big thing back in the late 80s. for no-till and stop plowing, put your plows away, and then, advancements in fertilizers and seed and waterways that they made you put in, and wind breaks for erosions and stuff, which were all good programs, I guess, to keep your soil where it belonged and keep farming going. But now it's go big or go home. And if you're not farming, I would say today's day and age, if you're not farming 2,000 plus acres, you are considered a dinosaur and you're going to go out of business. It's kind of sad that it has to be that way, because there's no more survivor farms. People that farm for their own food and to make enough money to pay their taxes. Taxes here, you wouldn't even believe what they are. It's insane. And, so those survivor farmers are all pretty well gone. The buildings are run down. I mean, I've been in the South, down in North Carolina, Virginia, Maryland, and you go onto these farms that were family farms, that were surviving farms. I even filmed a few of them. You got to see that. Those were, 10, 15, 20 years ago, they folded their doors and a big farm gobbled it up. And that's what's happening with YouTube. The big channels that they promote are basically pushing out the smaller, older channels. I'm not bitter by it at all. It doesn't bother me in the least, because I'm not falling into the trap of I'm giving you this, therefore you must do what I say. And I hate watching a infomercial that is 10 to 20 minutes long about, we'll just use FBN, Farmers Businessmen's Network. Probably a great organization. I've looked at it, and I think that I will probably sign up for it in the case that I plant corn, because there's a lot of chemicals and stuff that I can buy through FBN that will save me a bunch of money. Now, I'm not going to advertise for them. If they come to me and say, hey, we'll be an FBN partner because you know what, you're one lonely farmer, I'm going to say, no, thank you. I'll just buy products through you. I don't need you to pay me to do anything. And those sponsorships, once you sign on to that shit, you've lost control of your channel. You can only do so much. And if you say something that is off color and they see it and you're advertising for them on your channel, sorry to say, you will get spanked for that. So you're better off. I'm like, well, do what you want. That's your business. But you're no longer creating for yourself to show to others. You are creating for the dollar. Yes, the world runs on money. I get it. I have made money from YouTube indirectly. The reason I got the North Carolina jobs was YouTube. The reason I got the Virginia, Maryland jobs, YouTube. People know me. People want to buy stuff. I do that a little bit, not so much. I don't advertise so much for this. I have an embroidery business that Teresa runs downstairs doing this, and that comes from YouTube. And those are where I can control where I'm going instead of someone else controlling where I'm going. So, same thing with Big Ag. Man, once you buy those big pieces of equipment, and you've got to do more, buddy. You got to do more to pay for that stuff, and sometimes people become slaves to their equipment. I felt that way at some points in my time, like, oh my God, man, I just bought this equipment and now I'm a slave to it. But I'm pretty savvy, I guess, when it comes to, producing, who I sell to, where I sell to, how much I get for my products, and where I'm going on that end. I haven't gone to a broker. I've been told, go to a broker, you'll get paid right away. Well, I know people that have sold through the broker ain't getting paid right away either. It just happens, and I'd rather be in control of my own stuff than losing control of it after having control of it for so long. And I'm not some control freak by any means. I just know that if I fail, it's on me. I didn't give it to somebody else to fail. And I got one more thing to say about people and YouTube and stuff like that. So I watch these sailing channels, right? La Vagabond is probably the one that I like the most. It's a young couple. Well, not as young as they used to be, but it's a young couple. They have a little guy, little Lenny, cute kid. They're sailing around the world on their $1 million yacht that they bought by doing YouTube. It's awesome that they were able to do that. I like their content, and they've gotten so big now that they're over 1,200,000 subscribers. I mean, it's insane how many million. Just people watch these people, and I started watching them when they had like 30,000 subscribers, and I'm like, wow, I was there kind of at the beginning, watching these people. And as they have evolved, and they took on a film guy, editor, they paid him to do it, and it didn't work out. Daniel Troyer, you could see he still makes some videos here and there, as he was on the boat with them, and he moved on, and now they're paying somebody else to edit it because they have created a machine. And a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, this is not the first time I heard this name, but this girl, Greta Thunberg. Okay, so here's a girl. She's 16 years old. Her parents allowed her to drop out of school to become a climate activist. Now, I don't know anything about her. I think I've heard the president muddle something about her. So I did some research on her before I started this morning, and I thought, who cares what this little girl is preaching? If you don't like what she's saying, don't listen to her. But I was looking at La Vagabond's Instagram this morning, and I was reading the comments. These poor people. It's like this girl who is passionate about climate change. Now, do I believe that the climate is changing? Absolutely, 100%. It's been changing since the dawn of time. If it didn't, we'd still have dinosaurs and weird-looking plants, growing in the bushes here. At some point, this was a tropical paradise, and now it's cold and miserable. Maybe we're going back the other way, and dinosaurs will sprout up out of a coconut somewhere. I don't know. But I think there's a lot of money that's involved in this Greta Thunberg because she is a 16-year-old girl with Asperger's, and she doesn't fly. Where she goes, she hops on a sailboat, and these people just so happen to be sailing. And she said that she needed a lift to Portugal because the summit, the climate change summit, wasn't gonna. They moved it from New York to Portugal, so. These people that have this sailboat, this La Vagabond, sailing La Vagabond, they're like, hey, we're adventurers. We got a sailboat. We can sail this little girl across the ocean. And I think her parents went with her. Now, she's 16 years old. She's got Asperger's. Her parents allowed her to drop out of school, which I don't agree with. I don't agree with that. But she has a passion for the climate change. I don't care what this kid does. As long as it doesn't directly affect me in some negative way, she can stand up at the podium and tell me that a dinosaur is going to shoot out of my ass in 5 years, and, okay, whatever. I don't care. But I'm looking at the La Vagabond's Instagram, and they're getting crucified for taking this 16-year-old kid with Asperger's across the ocean so she could do a talk at the Climate Change Summit. Okay. Can't we just leave it at that? No. I'm unsubscribing you. You've sold out. And that just plays into what I'm saying about YouTube. People are pushing back about this. Now, there are people that continue to subscribe, and for every one person that has unsubscribed from that very large channel, because Google is pushing these channels, they're pushing these channels so far, so fast, that if one person unsubscribes, 3 people will subscribe. And a video that was made 3 weeks ago about Greta Thunberg is no longer going to be relevant for new subscribers. They're like past that. They're like, hey, I don't know anything about Greta Thunberg, but I like the content, and So then they just kind of cycle on past. And I think that's what's going to happen with La Vagabond. But, I like the channel. I watched 3 different channels: Sailing Doodles, Sailing La Vagabond, and Sailing Sophisticated Lady. I like the Sophisticated Lady one because he's just this Canadian guy, but he's got a monotone voice. I think he needs to have a little more pizzazz, but he tries and it comes out the same every single time. I think he would have more subscribers if he would do that. And he brings women on board, has fun with them for like a year or 2, and then they get tired of his bullshit and off he goes again and gets another one off the internet, and they show up, usually from other countries. He had a Russian girl there. She was pretty sexy, but, now he's got an Italian girl, and her butt crack hangs out all the time, and I just don't like that. But I'd like to go sailing with the Sophisticated Lady guy, just because. Rick Moore is his name. You can look at him. It's Rick Moore is the channel. But I'd like to go sailing with him above anybody else. He's got more experience. He's an older guy. He's in his 50s, I believe. If he's not in his 50s, he's a terrible looking 40s, but he's in his 50s. He sails a 50-foot or a 53-foot sailboat, which is a pretty good sized sailboat, and he's in the Caribbean. It's not far from me. I could take a week. Me and my wife and son could take a week down there and go sailing in the Caribbean with him, and just come back and we'll have had a great time. Whereas some of the other sailing, like Sailing La Vagabond, when they were beginning, they were taking on sailing charters because they didn't have the money that they have today through YouTube and their sponsors. I mean, Outremer is the boat that they sail, and that thing, they're the best advertisement for Outremer out there. Juno is the one that Rick Moore sails, and I don't know, Sophisticated Lady or Sailing Doodles. I don't know what they're. I'm kind of new to that channel, but I just like sailing. I want to do it. I just want to do it. I think that is the most your skill and your senses, your navigation, your ability to fix and repair daily. Yeah. Is put to the test on there, and you get to where you're going on your own skill, and I just like that. So, but anyways, I guess I've rambled on long enough about how farming and YouTube are kind of the same, and how the evolution of it has. Oh, and in the end, and it's starting to happen now, just from what I could see, I think Google or YouTube, they're going to rebel against it. The algorithm is already screwing stuff up, and people are going to be looking back on the older videos and what happened to the freedoms of YouTube? We're not free here anymore. I used to be able to make an oxyacetylene bomb and blow up a groundhog right out the end of his hole. And yay, it was great fun. We did it. How did you do that? Oh my God, this is the most awesome channel ever. I do that now, and bam, you are bam. That is inappropriate content, And then they turn around, it's like they want kid-friendly content. But if you make kid-friendly content, what do? You get spanked. If it's kid-friendly, meaning 13 and below 13 years of age, 13 and above, they're considered not kids anymore. But below 13 years old, I hate kids on my channel, okay? If you're below 13 years old, do not watch this stuff. I will corrupt you. Please don't come to my channel if you're below 13 years old. If your mom and dad are there watching and they think that it's okay for you to see it, then fine. But other than that, do not log on as below 13 years old onto my channel, because that'll piss me off. Because they will demonetize, they will flag, and they can fine you up to $43,000+ for every video that is kid-friendly but not marked kid-friendly. Isn't that awesome? Or if you're not making kid-friendly videos and you post them as kid-friendly videos, then you can get fined $43,000 and plus dollars, and you can get demonetized and everything else. So they want kid-friendly videos that aren't kid-friendly videos, but they are geared towards adults that you can't say kids can watch. But if you make it so that a kid can't watch it, they flag you for inappropriate content. Oh, it's It's awful. Being on YouTube is like slowly dangling your balls in a vice and having your wife clamp down on them knowing that she doesn't want kids anymore. It's okay? So that's what YouTube is like. If you've made it this far, it's deteriorating. And it's a shame. I mean, could you imagine dangling your balls in a vice and having your wife clamp down on them because she doesn't want kids anymore? I mean, you're getting them squeezed, buddy. Yeah. I mean, she wants to, but she don't want that. But anyhow, it's just the way it is, I guess. I see the end of YouTube coming pretty quickly. YouTube as we knew it is gone. YouTube as it's going, they're going to get rid of me. I'm gone. As of January 1, it wouldn't surprise me if the lights go out on my channel because of some unforeseen rule or law that they put into place that makes the things that I did 5, 10, 10 years ago illegal for YouTube. And they're going to flag me, they're going to ban me, they're going to demonetize my channel, and eventually take it away. And then you'll just get to see the sponsored, promoted, and kid-friendly, not kid-friendly content. And it's going to be a boring place, if you ask me. That's what's going to happen. Agriculture, I think that it's at this point where we're here now. We're level. We're kind of flatlined, barely paying our bills with the money that we make, in agriculture. I know $3 corn doesn't cut it anymore. What do you do with $3 corn and $200 an acre rent or $100 an acre rent? You do $100 an acre rent at $3.25 for a bushel of corn, you better be producing 180 to 200 bushels, no less than 200 bushels to the acre. Because if you don't make 200 bushels to the acre, that 180 bushels to the acre, you've lost money. Your equipment, your time, your fertilizer, your herbicides, your fuel, your help eats it. It's gone. I don't know about the Midwest. Maybe they can produce 180 to 200 bushels to the acre all day long, and their taxes are lowered out there than what they are here, and I don't know. It is what it is. But I've been talking for 47 minutes and change, almost 48 minutes, so I'm going to let you go. I hope you understood what I said, and I hope you enjoyed this chat. And in the end here, should I do a podcast like this and just advertise that way? Like, hey, this is my podcast, and then get a sponsor that way, and then maybe that's how I would make money on this thing. I don't really need to make money on this channel. I just enjoy posting stuff and sharing my opinions and what I see and how it is. And I've been told 1,000 times that you need to do a podcast. Well, this is probably the podcast you're going to get.